Welcome to Marketing Wins, how real brands move forward. I'm Valerie Morris, and on each episode, we dive into real topics with real people about how they're getting their next little or big win in marketing. If you're new to the show, go ahead and hit subscribe on whatever podcast player you are listening to right now. That way, you will not miss a single episode of Marketing Wins. So today we are talking about a really fun topic that a lot of people in marketing don't think about, and it's we call it super fans. But you can have super fans that are, you call them all sorts of different things. People use different terms for this, but the concept is still the same. And so today let's break that down. What do you think, Emily?
Yeah, I'm excited. This is like just the framework that we all need in our lives just to tackle marketing that feels like such a big beast. It's, kind of goes down to some really simple principles that, with our little sports analogy, I think we can all relate to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So we have this sports analogy. We kind of call it the superfan framework. It's not official, it's not permanent, it might change, but the concept is similar of just like we've all been to those sporting events where, the fans show up with their face painted and they're wearing the crazy costume and like they're at every single game, no matter what the weather is, and they are out getting other people hyped up.
Yep.
It's the same concept with your brand. Is if you're wanting to grow, you eventually need to get to the point where you've got people beating the drum for you. They're out there getting other people hyped about your business on your behalf. That's the goal, because that's what's going to drive the business for you without you having to necessarily be out there doing it yourself. So let's break down a little bit, like, what is a super fan in terms of marketing? What are some of the other phrases that we kind of hear people talking about, Emily? Because different industries, people they resonate with different words associated with this. So what are some of those words?
We've also thrown around groupie, like in the music industry, because groupies just like follow artists all over the country or the world and, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, VIP, just the words that like encapsulate, okay, these are the valued players in our industry, depending on your industry. So, that might be like a referral source, someone who, whenever your company is like on the topic of, oh, hey, we need this need filled. Okay, I know somebody. You're top of mind for that person in your industry. So, I mean, what other ones? I mean, those are the first ones that come to mind. We talked about ambassador. I know there's like programs for that, but even just like people who are just so stoked on your brand and they're ready to just tell anybody. I was talking to someone the other day about their ambassadorship with a brand, and what I was like taking away from it is they were invited into this brand in a really cool way. There wasn't necessarily like a payment for their invitation, but they felt like they were a part of something that they believed in. And like, they just are free advertisement for that brand, which I think is really cool. And when you can invite people in like that, that's your super fan. That's your most valued customer, because there's like that ripple effect. What other ones come to your mind? Those are the first ones that I thought of.
Yeah, there's others that, as we've been talking with people about this concept, a lot of people resonate with the word advocate. Someone's out advocating for your brand. But, as we're talking about it, the word that honestly came to mind is influencer.
Yep.
Which I cringe a little bit at saying, because influencers kind of have this, like, I don't know, in a lot of ways, kind of a fake, snobby, elitist connotation. At least that's what I see, because a lot of brands are like, we know the value of influencers, but they've kind of gotten a bad rap thinking that they're just going to get a bunch of free stuff for posting a picture on Instagram. the reality is the original concept of an influencer is that they're influencing someone else's decision to buy
Yep.
your product or your service. So whether you want to call it an influencer, an advocate, a super fan, whatever, the reality is you
Right.
need other people in your community or within your industry out there talking about you just as much as you're talking about you. And
Right.
so this is a piece that I think a lot of businesses kind of miss out on. And a lot of people think, well, gosh, I'm not a sports team. I don't have a clothing brand or a gear brand where I could hire an influencer. I'm a financial advisor, or I'm a roofing company, or I'm a health tech company. Like some of these
Yeah.
companies that we've worked with are really buttoned up brands. And so a lot of them don't really feel like, oh, like I don't have that flashy thing where like, do people really want to be talking about me? But there are very strategic ways that you can do it. And we've seen a few people do it in some really interesting, interesting industries. Like we've even had
Yeah.
like SaaS tech leaders leverage this strategy to keep their network fresh and
Yeah.
stay connected. We've seen people in senior living healthcare industries
Yep.
create some really cool things by leveraging the concept of their network helping be their biggest fans and
Right.
refer them out for them. So, I mean, what do you think when it comes to building super fans? Do you feel like people in marketing realize the power of this, or do you feel like most people are missing out?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I feel like it, like you were saying, they're like, oh, we're not a sports team. Um, I think that's a big part of like people don't have the context or like the understanding of like who is my super fan, like who is my ideal super fan. Um, Depending on what industry you're in. Like if you're a nonprofit, donors are probably going to be one of your biggest super fans. If you're in, like say the wellness industry, like your clients who come, day in and day out, they are always booking the next appointment. You need to be nurturing those people
Mhm.
because they're going to be your advocates. They're going to go out and be like, oh my gosh, you need a facial. I know who you need to go to. And
Yeah,
you're top of mind. And a lot of times people just serendipitously get those clients or have those donors, and then they don't nurture it. And there's like so many ways to nurture that relationship, you know, face to face, relationally, but then also always having a space for them online and always inviting them in so that they don't ever forget. And they
yeah,
always remembering the impact that your brand has on their lives and how you're a service to them or, whatever it may be. So I think I think people have super fans even without trying sometimes, but they don't engage that ripple effect, if that makes
yeah.
sense. Like
Well,
they could
yeah,
be
and
working easier. It could be easy, like continuation of the super fan.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like within the kind of our super fan framework, we think about the sports analogy and like you start off and you've got your existing fans, and it's like if you don't do something to help them feel like they're still very much part of the team, if you will, quote unquote, um, you're going to lose them. Eventually, they're going to be like, well, it's not fun being a fan of this team that doesn't seem to care about me. So I'm gonna start cheering for the team that my spouse likes or the team with the town that I live in. Like you start to lose people if you're not maintaining those key people. And so those accidental super fans that are just naturally going to tell others about you, if you're not nurturing those existing people, you're definitely going to miss out. But I think, what we're talking about is a lot of businesses don't even think strategically about how to build new super fans. They're just hoping for those few
Right.
accidentals that will pop up just because of their personality. And in this instance, it's like, well, no, let's get really focused and intentional to develop relationships with people that I know are going
Yeah.
to have my ideal client in their corner. And so like for me, for example, like when I started Tintero, it was very intentional to connect with other people that did other marketing activities like videographers,
Right.
um, Google ad specialists, like some of those folks that I did not touch that piece. And it was like, okay, I want to go connect with them because their clients are very often the same kinds of people who will hire me.
Hmm.
And so it's like, how do you figure out who those people are? And you, in today's world, it's a little harder. You want to come across authentic, you want to come across as strategic, but you don't want to like come across slimy, right? And
Right.
so it's just an interesting thing. I don't think a lot of people think about how do I build, essentially, it's like networking. And I think a
Right.
lot of people think of that as like, oh, okay, sales. Like, I got to go out to these networking events. I've got to go to chamber events. I've got to go to this industry conference. And just by doing those activities, it's going to make things work, which it
Right.
might. But what if you could take those same people that you're out networking with in person or intentionally on a sales side of things and leverage those relationships into marketing content that could allow you to further that relationship and keep them continually in your sphere and thinking about you.
Right.
And that's what we're kind of thinking about when we look at some of the marketing strategies that we've done with clients. It's really helping them give them that 1-2 punch so that all their sales efforts are going to be that much more effective with their network.
Yeah.
So like what's like let's jump in and spend some time just talking through because we've done some pretty fun things with some clients that has allowed them to kind of build that network, create marketing content, have something interesting to say that no one else is saying in the marketplace, and they're doing it all within like one strategy. So what's one example that because we've been working on a few recently.
Just like of growing that fan base, like how we've started that. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so I'm thinking of like one of our clients who is an author
Yeah.
and um, she has a great presence on Instagram
Right.
and she's looking at doing email marketing, but she recently employed the concept of like doing a podcast.
Yeah.
And
It's
she's
actually what
not
I was
just
thinking
like,
about.
yeah, she's not just like thinking about like, oh, who would be fun to have on my show, but it's like, who would be strategic to have on my show, you know?
Right.
And you've had a lot of conversations with her around her guests.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing with that?
Yeah. I was actually, as we were talking more about this, I just kept on thinking of like, one of our services is the book marketing. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing in that blueprint that is, that we work through when doing a book marketing campaign is inviting people in. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what it keeps on going back to, which is really cool. And a lot of people just like they want to be super buttoned up, all ready to go, and then present. And then there's almost this like wall between your, audience, customer, whatever they may be. And people like a story. People like to come along on the journey with you, and thinking creatively about that is like super cool. So this client that we're working with, she's on this really cool journey of like inviting people into her story. She's writing a book, she's starting a podcast. She wants to start like just giving to her audience. And it's really cool to be a part of because it's just super creative. And you just have to really think strategically on, okay, how do you, for this specific industry, how do you invite people in? And she's doing it, and she's it's so cool to like be alongside her and like helping her develop these different tools that is just kind of like inviting people into her culture and like
Yeah.
something she's created that people didn't know they needed. I didn't know I needed it just working with her. I like I'm just so excited to be a part of what she's creating. And so I don't know. That's the thing. People want. Sometimes people don't even know what they don't have and what could be, changing their life in a positive way, impacting them. And then sometimes the person who owns the business or owns is an author or whatever, they might be shy, have imposter syndrome, and they're like, "Oh, I don't really know." But people want to be invited in. They want to be a part of a story. They want to be a part of your story, and it might, you know, impact someone in a way that you had no idea it could do. So
Yeah.
that's been cool. Like building a newsletter, that's something that I'm really excited about for this client. Just kind of like funneling those segmented email list in of like connections that are already made, giving them resources and like they're already like, okay, yeah, I know this person and I'm excited about like what I'm going to see in here and like what I'm going to take away for it.
Yeah.
Um, so anyways, I like that's one of the things that I'm excited about and just like the podcast that she's launching. Um, it's all like invitational and it's all like going to go back into building that super fan network and like ripple effect,
Yeah.
with all that she has to offer, it's going to like make a ripple effect through those platforms. And I mean, the podcast with interviewing people is really great too, just because you get to have that face to face time with someone and really like dig deep and ask yourself as, the author or the brand, person that, whatever your brand may be, you get to kind of break down and see it from a audience member's perspective. So it's you could go so many different directions because marketing is vast and it's kind of a hard thing to navigate. You're like, okay, which way do I go? There's so many different avenues. But with this one, it's like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. This is, and the angle that you're coming about it, the people that you're strategically inviting, you know, it all is going back to the same thing, but in a different way. And just building that network. So yeah, I'm excited about that one.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
it's gonna be so good.
that one's really fun too because she is thinking about who she's bringing in. Like the podcast is kind of the event venue, if you will, and she's just inviting other people in and saying like, "Hey, bring your fans along too." And so what's cool is she's interviewed some pretty big names in terms of authors and other folks who have much larger platforms than she does. And so when by the time her book launches, she will have had all of these other people talking about her. And when she goes to launch her book, she has all these people that she can go to and say, "Hey, my book is live now. If you'd be willing, share it with your network." So she's strategic about who she's inviting into it. And I think that's the thing is like it could be a podcast, it could be a video show. I know some people who have done live video shows on Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram and all the platforms, YouTube, where they've been inviting people into that space for years. Some people have blog series where it's like, we're going to invite people into this. One of our other clients, this was about probably 6 or 7 years ago. I'd have to look up the exact date. Time has been flying really fast lately.
Yeah.
Um, but she built essentially a Facebook group after working with us. And some of the strategy that we employed for her was to build a Facebook group around a specific geographic area for the senior living space. And she works in that space. She's the host. She invites other people to come in and participate in her group. But really, the intent of the group is not to talk about her subject matter necessarily and what she does on a day to day basis. It's really speaking to the aging population and adults who have parents going into senior living facilities and getting older with health issues. And, you're dealing with powers of attorney and all this stuff. And so a lot of consumers, the end customer essentially, who's making the decision is they have tons of questions. And so this Facebook group has been this amazing forum for people to ask questions, have a safe spaced event, and also for our client, it's been a great place for her to be the host
Mm-hmm.
and invite other experts to speak up as much or as little as she wants. um, and I
Right.
can't tell you how many times I see people asking questions around, like, hey, I need XYZ, and all these people chime in. You should talk to so and so. You should talk to so and so. And it's like she's getting so many people referring her because she created the space. So whether the space
Yeah.
is a podcast, it's a Facebook group, it's you know, uh, what is the word? Not Pantheon, Patreon group, or
Yeah.
any of these other spaces that aren't technically on the standard social platforms. Like, whatever space you're creating, if that's your space that you own and you're just inviting people in strategically, you're going to get those people feeling like, gosh, Emily did something really great. Like, she invited me in. I feel like I need to reciprocate and
Right.
give something back. And so then those people are so much more likely to hand out a referral to you, work with you directly. Like, they're going to talk about you to other people. And you're just going to create those super fans, not by accident. Like, that's the piece that I
Right.
think a lot of people miss out on. And to your point, like, it's spot on. So many people have a
Right.
ton of those advocates already in their sphere. They got to keep those nurtured. But also, how do you create more of those? And that's the
Right.
piece that I think a lot of people miss out on.
Yeah. And another just small point with that I think is really cool is just how she's creating this Facebook group that's adding just baseline value to people. There's not like some major agenda that if like someone, makes a post and they have to, pay, or there's nothing, no like bottom line agenda, but creating a space where like that's still like advertising for yourself. Having just a space with your name where you're the authority in that group, but you're nurturing and you're helping people create a community. Like, that's trust building, that's like inviting people in, that is relating to your audience, and it's so much easier to come in that way. I mean, other sales tactics, it's fine. And maybe that would be like starting from the very beginning of the whole process of getting a super fan, and it could still work. But when you're nurturing your super fan base, you want to come in the back door almost and just be like, come alongside with your current fan base. So I just love that part of it, the invitation. And then you have so much more allowance to ask in those situations. If someone's knocking on your door, you don't know them from Adam, and they're like, hey, I want to sell you some books. You're like, your guard is up. But if you've already been a part of something that has given you value, um, then you're so much more like your walls are going to be down. So
Yeah.
anyways, I just love that about the Facebook group, and I wanted to add that. But yeah, this framework is super cool when just trying to build up to that super fan base. Um, but it doesn't just like happen overnight. It's not just like bam, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, the building the network, it's not, it might lead to some immediate referrals. It might lead to some immediate sales you can trace back to an influencer giving things out. But for the most part, it's going to have more of that long term benefit. And in the big picture, like, that's what you want. It's going to be more loyal and long term. It's not going to be just the flash in the pan, quick sale that you need to get to from point A to point B. And that's the thing about the framework. You got your nurturing, you got to get new fans, and you got to have super fans. You got to have all three for different purposes, and also for the different longevity. Some strategies work better to get short term sales, but those are short term sales you're going to have to pay a lot more for. You're going to have to hustle harder for. Whereas, like, these other things, if you can build up that super fan network, you're not going to be hustling in the long run. The hustle is going to turn into more of just a rest, where you can chill, sit back, and enjoy the leads
Right.
coming your way. So, yeah, I
Exactly.
think when it comes to any of these tactics, like, the reality is relationships are always number one. And so the more you're focusing on the relationship and showing up authentically, building a super fan network is really going to feel very natural for you. It's not going to
Right.
feel forced. It's going to be fun. And it's honestly going to make you feel like you are being so much more intentional with
Right.
the sales efforts that you're already considering doing. And so this is a
Right.
fun way where your sales tactics and your marketing tactics can often overlap, and you can become a little bit more efficient in a way that
Mm,
often feels so much more natural. So
right.
super fans, we're big fans of building out
Big
a
fans.
super fan. No, we really believe in the power of building these advocates for your brand, regardless of what industry or what type of business model you're in. There are ways to approach this in any type of scenario. So, yeah, may we all go be a little bit more intentional today as we go to build our superfan network. If you're new to the show, go ahead and hit subscribe on whatever podcast player you are listening to right now. That way, you will not miss a single episode of Marketing Wins.